Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And you can get more information and see previous shows at our website, which is www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my two guests today, and they are Scott Fisher and Kirby Gibson. And you're ahead of me, Scott. You can wave to all your friends, Kirby as well, and that's Kirby. And each week we focus on cool stuff about happening in Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And these two people are about two coolest people I know in Western North Carolina, and also two of my favorite theater people. And as you'll see, they kind of have this amazing both chemistry together, I think, and they're very talented folks. Kirby Gibson is making her Sublime Theater debut since her graduation from UNC Asheville in 2012. Kirby has been heavily involved in local theater scene here in Asheville and surrounding areas. She also spent several years in Chicago, mostly exploring storefront theater before returning to Asheville in 2020. Some of her previous favorite roles including Gary Coleman in Avenue Q, Marta and Company, Stephanie in Oxalis, Charlotte in The Revolutionaries, and Susan in Tick Tick Boom. I think I've seen you just about in all those, Kirby.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, Scott Fisher is since moved to Asheville in 2007, has been doing community theater here in 2008 since then. He has worked with the Magnetic Theater, Attic Salt Theater Company, Different Strokes Performing Arts Collective, and the Sublime Theater and Press. He's been an elementary school teacher with Asheville City Schools since 2011. His son currently a senior at the School of Inquiry and Life Sciences at Asheville. He's been happily married. Said the right words, Kirby. Kirby doesn't mention that, but Scott's background, he's been happily married to his darling Kirby Gibson for just over a year. He loves board games and hiking. And that's very okay. That's a very sweet background, Scott, to what you said. If you notice, Kirby didn't say anything about you, but you said something about Kirby, so that's good.
Yeah, it was in there. Steve cuts it.
Okay, I got it. You get the brownie points. Hey guys, first of all, I thank you for being on the show with me, and I think it's the first time, Scott, I've interviewed you. Kirby, have I interviewed you in the past?
I think only on the radio. I don't think on the podcast.
Well, now we're on our podcast.
The old studio space is what I remember downtown.
Good memory. Yeah, that was then. This is now. It's really cool because I love the flexibility. First of all, you don't have to come into the station, and we can I can interview you anytime, any place I want. And right now I'm interviewing you. You guys are located in where you hang out. This is
our house.
This is our this is where we live.
We just had breakfast a little while ago. Right?
Okay, and I can tell because I see in the background I see different theater posters.
Yeah, this is the bonus room. So you've got some movies, some musicals going on, a little bit of latchwork art. There's like the craft room too.
The piano's behind us.
The piano, yeah.
And the board games are over here.
The board game collection on the shelf over here.
Oh my goodness!
Lots of fun to be had in this room.
Just a few. How many board games do you have there?
I think they have about 100 or so unique titles. Now,
Kirby, are you a board game person, or you become?
I have definitely become much more of a board game person than I was before, but I did, as an only child, play many board games with my parents. So I was definitely into them, but this is the most I've ever known about board games in my entire life. And I'm not mad about it.
What's the place I did a show on them too? The board game place in Asheville, and they moved.
Yeah, Well Played Board Game Cafe. Is that the one?
Yeah. Do you guys hang out there at all?
Yeah, actually, we're probably going to go there today after this podcast.
Oh, okay, good. Well,
there's a game that we don't own that my son really wants to teach us, so we're going to go check it out.
Okay, well, tell them I said hello. I want to do another show on them. I did a show on them when they first opened, and I loved the location. I thought it was such a cool place, and they moved right. Where are they now located?
Yeah, they're on Cox Avenue now, sort of a little bit further down on the south slope, kind of right next to that Mineral Museum.
Okay.
But it's nice, like so much more space, big tables, room to walk around, places to prepare food. So it's, I feel like it's nicer in terms of the just the amount of extra space they have at their new place.
Yeah, I'd never been there until fairly recently because I have a lot of board games here. So I was like, well, why would I go somewhere else? But I really enjoy the place. Yeah.
And local theater artists also work there, like Abby Auman, who
Okay.
has a splatter play at Magnetic right now,
Right.
who wrote that. And Jared, who I can't remember his last name, but he was just in Black Comedy at Parkway.
That's
Also works there. So every now and then we get to go in and also see a couple people we know behind the counter.
Very cool. Well, I'll have to get there too. But I love the old place, and I had a party there once. It was just a great place to have a party.
Yeah, plenty of room.
But yeah, it really is. Okay, but anyway, go back, switch gears a little bit then. And in terms of your respective backgrounds, first question I always ask Scott is in terms of how did you get into theater? When did you start becoming a theater guy?
Yeah, for me it was in high school. My older sister was also in theater. We happen to be in this room. I have an artifact too that this is a very old poster. This is from my freshman year of high school.
I love it.
I did a play called the Octet Bridge Club, which you can't really see. It's like old and raggedy and torn up right now. But it was a bunch of like senior girls and me, a little freshman boy, had a little part in it, and I just had a really great time, had a blast doing it. So I kept doing theater through high school, and then I went to college for theater and like earned a Bachelor of Arts in theater, for what that's worth.
Was that the first time you had ever done a play? The one you just showed?
I think so, unless you count like school recitals or like a Sunday school kind of church play. The first like real like a high school like a production where there's an audience and everything. Yeah, first one.
Because I've had this idea, and I'll share it with both of you. But I think some local theater should have everybody recreate their very first role. You know, so the one you just showed, that poster, we don't have a record of that anywhere.
I doubt it. I don't know. I mean, there might have been some dad with the camcorder on his shoulder. You know, this was 1996, I think, or something like that.
But wouldn't that be cool to give a chance to recreate your very first role? You know,
Yes.
Kirby, I'll ask you the same question. So your theater background, when did you start?
Very early. Both of my parents were involved in theater in some way, so I was sort of what you would call like a rehearsal baby, as they say, where as a child you are at a lot of rehearsals while your parents are involved in the production, and maybe you're set up in a corner with some entertainment or something. So I sort of grew up around it and became very early on intrigued by it, and as an only child, was happy for all the attention and saw that it was something my parents did and wanted to get involved. And so, I was in a drama club in elementary school. I remember doing like very angry ladybug in like first grade. There's just like plays all the way kind of up until, with an audience, I would say 4th or 5th grade. I remember us doing a couple of shows, and then I just really went hard in it in middle school, and middle school was big for me with audience members. That was like a big one. And then actually I took a break kind of in high school. I did maybe one musical in high school. I switched over to marching band, and I was really a band kid for about 4 years, and I missed it so much that as soon as I decided to go to college at UNC Asheville, I was in the drama department all the time, very heavy in college, right back into my theater love. So it's kind of been fairly consistent for me. Always had a love for it, always had an affinity for it, and hope to continue.
Do you remember your first play?
Very first play. It depends on what you count as a play.
Right, that's tricky. That's tricky.
Because I was in Very Angry Ladybug, but that was not officially a play. We did the trial of Jack and Jill when I was maybe in 4th grade, or Trial of Jack and the Beanstalk, some kind of like weird fairy tale twist, young artist production with Jeff, which definitely had an audience. We had independent productions of that. So I'm going to say that one. I think Trial of like Jack and the Beanstalk or something like that.
But wouldn't that be cool, not only for Scott to see, but for other people to see your very first role? So the idea I've had, I've shared it with several people, is I'd love to local theater do a fundraiser. Everybody would just do their first role, or 5 minutes to their first role. Wouldn't that be a lot of fun?
Yeah, if you could find that script, I would be so intrigued to read it.
And to see if you can improve upon it. So then we're lucky. So you said you stopped acting for a while, then you got back into acting in college. And I was so grateful because you were acting all over the place in Asheville. And like I said, I've seen, I guess, a lot of stuff you've been in. But then for a while, I was so disappointed. You took a break to go to Chicago.
I did for about 3 years, a little over 3
You
years.
were there. I didn't realize you were there 3 years. So what, I guess, brought you out there, and then what brought you back?
Sure, yeah. You know, it had always kind of been my rough plan after I graduated with my theater degree to kind of go out and move to a city or a town where there was more opportunities to do that kind of thing, to really kind of explore the more professional scene and just leave North Carolina even for a little while. And, you know, for a while after I graduated, I was hanging around Asheville, sort of building my resume up. I was like acting in every community theater I could get my hands. I mean, I was, as you said, I was acting all over the place for
not just Asheville, but like everywhere, like Waynesville and
at Hart and, you know, in Hendersonville
and
so I was kind of always in something and always doing something. And then before I knew it, I was like, what, how 27, you know, mid-20s. And I was like, you know, if I'm gonna actually, you know, go do this, I should probably do it. I had that quarter life pilgrimage, you know, drive kind of where you want to figure it all out. And so yeah, I kind of just finally got the gumption to move out there in 2017. And it was hard. It was really difficult, but it was really great. I learned so much while I was there. I got a lot of experience there, and just learning to kind of survive on my own is great. And then the pandemic happened, as we all know, in 2020, and I was sort of already planning to maybe move back after 3 years, and that was just a good excuse to to get out of there. But I was in the middle of a show when the pandemic actually closed the show. We had just opened a show, and then in like late February of 2020, and then in early March in Chicago, we decided to cancel the rest of the run. So that was very dramatic. But also what brought me back was that I missed Scott so much. We were long distance that entire 3 years.
And you were going back and forth a lot, right?
Yeah, well, and we actually did a lot of meeting in the middle. So like we drive to Louisville, Kentucky, which is about 6 hours for both of us. And so we tried at least once a month, although it oftentimes was longer than that, sometimes shorter, but would try and see one another. And that 3 years is a long time to do that. And so we were both kind of eager to close the distance after that amount of time.
The longest stretch that we ever went without seeing each other was one year. It was from Labor Day to Veterans Day, which was maybe like 86 days or something like that, 90 days.
But who counts?
But who's counting? I was gonna say
86 days.
Yeah, so we always knew the relationship still really meant a lot to us, and that we never wanted to end it per se. We were just always willing to make it work as much as we could, and we're still together. So
well, a cool thing too, Scott, you're actual theater couple. So you met doing theater. How'd you meet?
So what, the first time, or like real meet, is a little tricky because the first time we actually officially met was we had a college class together at UNCA. She was beginning her
it was like my first semester.
Yeah, her undergraduate degree, and I had just moved to Asheville, and I was getting my teaching certification. So I was sort of a non-traditional student, but I was taking some classes, and so we were in a class together, and we knew each other the way that you would know someone that was in a class together, but we weren't like friends. We didn't like hang out or anything. Yeah. But that was the first time that we met, and then we didn't see each other again for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years or something like that, right? Because you were out.
Yeah, our paths maybe crossed once or twice in college, but then after that, did not meet again for another until after I graduated, over a year after I graduated. And then we got cast in a show together.
Right. And then working on a show together was sort of another time that we met, because then we worked together and knew each other in a way different from just sharing a college class.
What was that show? What was that show?
All in the Timing, yes, by David Ives. It was an Attic Salt piece. One of
Attic Salt's first.
Maybe they're one of their first ones in Asheville.
It was at 35 Below, which is ACT's Black Box, right. And 3 actors. It was supposed to be 4, but ended up being 3. And the 3 of us hit it off so well.
Yeah, Jeff Catanese directed.
Yeah, Jeff Catanese directed it, and
to this
Marcy
day, Jeff takes credit for getting us together.
Okay.
And Sammy Mills was the ASM on that, and who else was working on that? Rodney Smith did pictures in that. Sorry, I'm just shouting out. And anyway, so the show itself was great. Everyone who saw it loved it. It was just one of those really great comedic pieces. And we just have been friends ever since, and just really hit it off during that show. And that was almost 10 years ago.
Let me ask you, so what's it like? I always wonder that, acting as a couple, in other words, it's cool. So you do stuff separately, but you were telling me off there, you've done a bunch of stuff as a couple. What's it like being with your spouse in a show?
It's great. I mean, one of the really nice things is that
I set you up for that.
yeah. Well, who are you more comfortable with than like your partner, right? Like, this is the most comfortable person at all. Like, it's so easy to try things and to take risks and to experience and experiment next to somebody that I have like complete faith and trust in. So whereas in a normal show, I don't know, actors who are less familiar with each other have to sort of take time to build a sort of trust that they can kind of work together with, and we kind of have that walking in, right?
Yeah. For me, there's definitely, I don't want to say there's any cons to it, but sometimes it's hard, like if you're watching your partner go through maybe something that's emotionally fraught, or if they're in turmoil on stage, or that they're experiencing something that's hard because the material demands it.
Yeah.
It can be hard to kind of sit back and just like let it happen, or even if you're their scene partner causing it to happen, you just sort of have to, once the play's over, rehearsal's over, just be like, just kidding, like, I mean, we never really take it serious, but it sometimes that can be tricky.
Yeah, it can be a little tricky. In the show that we're doing right now, Ben and Angela, it's a 2-person show, and it's a story of this couple's life and their romance. And there are some parts of the relationship between the character of Ben and the character of Angela that do line up with Scott and Kirby, that we kind of do have similar experiences. But there are also ways that they are very different. The characters sometimes say and do things that are very different than what Scott or Kirby would do. So it can be tricky to like some of it lines up with us and some of it does not line up with us. So you can't you know what I mean? It's a little bit tricky.
What about reading lines? Do you do that both in terms of obviously the current show, but other shows? Do you read lines with each other?
Yeah. It is definitely easier when you can run lines whenever you're together. I think the problem for us is that we both work really hard, and then at the end of the day, neither of us really want to come home and run lines. And if neither of us want to do it, then maybe we won't do it as much as we should. We have to hold each other like accountable.
It is work. You do have to put the work in.
Yeah, because you're the only 2 people in the show, so the only people you're going to disappoint are like the director and like one another, and so you both have to do, I guess it's almost, you can't get too lazy.
We do often also help each other out when we are in shows apart. Like I will run lines with Kirby for another show she is in, and she will return the favor. But sometimes I don't want her to run lines with me if I want the show to be a surprise, right? Like if I'm in a sketch comedy show, I might not want her to see those lines until she sees me perform them. So I might not want her to run lines for some shows.
Well, it's funny, another couple, I won't mention them, but a theatrical couple in the area, and they don't like running lines with each other. They actually stay away from it for whatever the reason. So it's cool that you at least have a scene partner occasionally run lines with. I know.
Yeah, it's almost like we have no choice. I mean, like, who else am I going to run lines with but the other person who's in the show, and he's also the person I would run lines with in my house, so we might as well.
Now, I know Kirby, and one of the things I so much like about Kirby is I've seen her in several musicals as well. I don't know, Scott, have I ever seen you in a musical?
Probably have not. I doubt it very much. I'm in a sketch comedy group that does a little bit of singing and dancing every once in a while, but that's typically a lot lower quality, not quite musical theater caliber, like you might see from my lovely wife over here. I do love musicals, but I'm more of an ensemble harmonizer than like a leading romantic hero.
Well, I mean, we actually used to sing in a choir together, like a sort of a show choir, not like dancing or choreography, but this was Vocal Blast back 7 years ago, or something like that. So he definitely has, if you can tell, a very resonant baritone. Would you call yourself a baritone?
Yes, definitely.
Bass, maybe.
I might be one or two notes shy of bass.
Yeah, there's not a ton of like lead baritone roles in musical theater. You kind of have to look for those roles. So I feel like that in terms of vocal part, but I think you have a wonderful voice.
Oh,
I love hearing you sing.
Now, do you prefer,
But I definitely
Kirby,
do more musicals than this one.
with you, do you prefer musicals or dramas or comedies? What do you prefer? Kirby.
Me?
No, Kirby.
Kirby.
I
Softball.
prefer musicals. I'm just big musical nerd. I listen to musicals all the time. And as he can attest to, we literally just watched, I was a new musical last night. Anyway, so yeah, I like musicals. I like specific musicals, especially now that I'm a little older, my attention is getting pulled in different ways. I have to be a little more selective about the projects that I take on, but I'm always excited to do a musical when I can get my hands on one.
And talk, if you would, about the one you were just in, which you knocked my socks off on, but I thought that was
thank you.
Yes.
magnificent. Talk about that one.
Yeah, that was with Asheville Musical Theater, which is the brand new musical theater company here in town, which is so exciting. Managing director is Ethan Henry.
Yeah.
And he also directed this show.
I can't wait to see him do more stuff. It was really good.
Yeah. And I was in with Richie Barella. Anyway, yeah, it was a wonderful show. We did it in about 2-3 weeks. We had a very short rehearsal period, but we were all, there. And on top of it, we all loved the show. And it was, yeah, Ethan just really knew what he wanted to do with it, and he was prepared to bring it all into Tina McGuire and pull it off. And it was so fun. It was so fun.
You mentioned Rich. You mentioned the other person who was in that show with you. I thought he was great as well.
Yes, Mario. He was amazing. I had never gotten to work with him before, but I know he did Bright Star at SART a little while ago. And yeah, he was fantastic. I was so lucky to get to work with both of them. And they were great to have, just in terms of how quickly we had to learn everything, just being supportive, and also having times where you can tell people like, I don't know if this is right, like we need to check this, and just having them like, okay, yes, let's do it. Yeah, it was just a whirlwind, but I had such a great time. I was so lucky to be able to sing those songs. I love the Andrew Garfield movie that they made out of it on Netflix, and everyone should watch that. And so yeah, I was just thrilled that I got to do it at all, and had such a great time. I can't wait to see what Asheville Musical Theater does next. I think there's a cabaret coming up that they're involved in, and because there's so many talented singers and musical theater performers in Asheville.
There really are.
And so any more opportunities we can get to see them and work with them, I'm all for, especially ones that compensate their performers.
Well,
I love that.
One of the things I also loved about that show is that it's one of the shows too I'd never seen before. I saw the movie, which I love.
Yeah.
But I love it when places show stuff you don't see elsewhere. And again, that ties into Scott too, the current show you're going to be in. So I know nothing about that show. Had you known about it beforehand?
No, well, this is the world premiere, so it's a show
Oh,
that
is
has
it?
never
Oh, I
been.
didn't realize that.
It's never been produced before. It was written by David Hopes, a local playwright. And yeah, this is the very first time it has been staged. We have read it a couple of times. I think, when was the first time? Like a year ago or something like that?
Yeah, this play was written a while ago. I think like years ago. But this is the first time that it's coming to this fruition, really. So we're really excited. David Hopes, I actually taught at UNC Asheville when we were there, and I actually got to share the stage with David Hopes. He was in UNC Asheville's production of Our Town. And so I got to act with him a little bit, but I also got to help produce another short play of his when I was the president of Alpha Psi Omega, our drama honor society. We put on a 1-act festival, and one of the shows was a David Hopes show. And And then I saw his show, Washington Place,
Right.
that they did at Magnetic.
Was that great? It's a fantastic
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, and so when this came up and Steve approached us with the opportunity, you know, I was definitely excited to read the script and, you know, yeah, see what the next David Hope's show is.
And talk a little bit about Scott, if you would too. Kirby mentioned Steve. So your director is the guy we kind of both know, and director is who?
Yeah, Steve Samuels. I've known him for a very long time. The first show I did with him was called The Witches' Quorum, and that was at the Old Magnetic Theater, and that was maybe 2011. I think somewhere 2010 or 11, somewhere in that realm of time. And that was back when Magnetic Theater was across the street from where it is now. So that was a long time ago. And so since then, yeah, I've worked with him on the all popular How To Crew, the sketch comedy series, and we've put up several shows over the years. Since we transitioned over to we don't need all of this. Stop, please. We don't need all of this ridiculous. Steve, and since the transition over to the Sublime Theater, which is the new home of the How To Crew, I also worked with Steve on a doubleheader directed by Henry Williamson, in which Steve did the one-man show Crap's Last Tape.
Oh, sure.
And I did Zoo Story with another actor, Art Moore. And so I didn't actually act with him, but it was a doubleheader production with he and I together. And that was a fairly intense experience.
And y'all did it like twice, right?
We did it twice. Yeah, we did it at the BB Theater, and we also did it at the Black Box at Hart.
And there's another guy. You mentioned another guy, I think very talented. You don't see him too much, though. Art Moore. I don't know if he's still in the area.
Yeah, I feel like he moved, right? I don't think he lives in Nashville anymore.
But he was just very talented. The two of you killed that show. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah. Art Moore was in the very first show I ever did in Asheville, which was in 2008, and it was with a production company called the Scapegoat Theater Collective that no longer exists. But that was called Reference to Salvador Dali, Make Me Hot. And yeah, Art and I were, and it was a much younger Art Moore and Scott Fisher, because that's a long time ago.
Wow.
So stuff you do, Scott, do you have a preference in terms of comedy or drama, or?
I think they're both good. I tend to gravitate towards comedy, just because I have a lot of funny people that I like doing shows with, and I like having a good time, and I like taking on dramatic roles, but it does, it takes a lot out of you. So I think there's a lot of value in it, and I really appreciate doing the good work of dramatic acting. But I think that comedy is more my style and more my thing.
You're good at writing comedy too.
I do like to write little sketches.
Okay, so with the very sketch comedies, you're one of the writers for them as well?
That is correct. Yeah, there are several of us that write a number of the pieces, and I love it.
And they've got another one coming up in January, maybe?
In January, I think, yeah, the dates are not quite locked in.
That'll be another Sublime show, right?
Yeah, the title's not quite locked in, but it's like a third of the way written.
I bet Steve Samuels will direct it.
I bet he will.
And since we're mentioning Sublime Theater, we should mention that it's kind of a unique little group that Steve operates, I guess. And you do your shows at the BB Theater?
Yeah,
that seems to be his space. And it's the Sublime Theater Co. and Press, which is nice because it means that they're also a publishing house. They, produce plays as well as produce plays.
Now, with the upcoming show, if you would repeat the name of it and then the dates and how to get tickets, all that good stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. The show is called David Brennan Hopes is the playwright, and the show is Ben and Angela, and it opens October 5th. Let's see, the dates are October 5th through 21st, 7:30 p.m. at the BB Theater, which is in downtown Asheville, 20 Commerce Street. For ticket information, the Sublime Theater and Press, Google the Sublime Theater and Press. I think they have a Facebook page. I don't know how Facebook works, but if you know the name of the theater company, you know how to find it, right?
They have a ticket link on there.
Go to your computer and type in http://
Yeah, because they don't have an official, I don't know what's webpage per se, but they have
a website.
tickets
He used
sold through
Facebook.
their, yeah, Facebook. And it's about a couple. We're gonna follow on their journey from meeting into marriage and their ups and their downs and their growth as individuals and together.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, there's going to be, Jason Williams, really good lighting design, and Christy DeVille is doing the choreography. There are going to be some really interesting, I hope, dance numbers in there.
Dance pieces.
Hayden McKnight's costumes will show the characters kind of through time, I guess, and it should be a really a nice little beautiful romantic piece.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the cool things that Steve oftentimes brings in a show is, you wouldn't think it, but there'll be a dance number, or there'll be something which is kind of a lot of fun. It's just kind of thrown in there, but it makes you smile.
I think that'll be a few surprises that will be both kind of maybe striking, but also delightful. And I think this play strikes a really good balance in terms of representing the couple and when they're good, and the couple when they're maybe not so.
Yeah, I think so too. I was a little bit reluctant at first, because just it seemed at first, the idea of like a couple and their romance, blah blah. But the way that it is written, there are so many, I guess I'll just say, like, little magical things that happen that are very interesting, and I think are really refreshing.
Who should see the play?
This is a really great question. I'm an elementary school teacher, so a lot of times I'll have parents find out that I'm in a show, and they always say, "Oh, can I bring my kids?" And usually the answer is no. I don't do that many kid shows, and this is one of them. So I would say this is not a show for children, but only because we talk about grown-up stuff, and it would be boring for kids. So really, anybody who is in any way interested in relationships and the dynamics of romance between people, I think there's something to get out of this show.
Yeah,
anybody who has ever been in love.
It's very hard. These characters are flawed, they're not perfect, and I can definitely see myself in them. So yeah, it's that kind of human slice of life story that I think a lot of us can relate to, whether we're in relationships or have had rocky ones in the past, or
to the
good
contrary,
ones.
I thought you were going to say something else. You'd say present company excluded, flawed. not
Well,
not for me.
No, I mean, it is nice in this show because neither of the characters are like 100% right or 100% wrong. It's not like there's a good guys and bad guys. It's kind of like representative of reality. Like, we're humans, and like sometimes we are on the right side of an issue or the wrong side of an issue, but that doesn't, that just changes throughout time. And we can be both right and wrong, and good and bad, because we're everything all together.
You mentioned, and I knew this about you too, you're an elementary school teacher. What level? And
well, now I teach kindergarten through 5th grade. I'm a specialist, so now I teach all of those grades. For a long time, though, I focused on younger grades. I was 1st grade and kindergarten for the first 10 years I was teaching. So that's a pretty specific niche field. And now, as I mentioned, I'm a specialist, so I see every class in the whole school, kindergarten through 5th grade.
You do any theater stuff with them?
Sometimes I do. I'm the experiential education specialist, so my job is to provide hands-on activities for children, whether that's in the garden digging up worms, or whether that's on stage, like writing and acting things out. I definitely find ways to get theater in there. Usually when I do theater with children, it is about process over product. So rarely do I end up with a finished piece to perform. It's not so much about making a show for people as it is the process of theater that we're doing: theater games, theater activities, writing and acting out.
And one of the great things I would imagine for you is, and I had the same thing too, I had been a teacher, is I guess in the classroom, do you get to act as well every day?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely. To be a teacher, you do sort of have to take on a little bit of a larger than life persona, because you have to find a way to capture and captivate the attention of children. And you can do that by being really like mean and yelling at them, I guess. Or you can try to find a way to, charismatically, hey kids, like, it's going to be really fun. You have to like persuade them to come along with you on this journey. And children are very skeptical. They can be a very difficult crowd to win over. They don't come in the door really wanting to necessarily be on your side.
Kirby, I'm hearing a great, if not skit, a great play idea for Scott. Can you imagine him being, kind of a Mr. Rogers of the ages or something like that. You
I
know?
would love it. I would
Wouldn't
love
that be
it.
Yeah.
great? I can just see him doing this. Let me ask you too, in terms of the both of you. So I know you're acting. Have either of you directed at all?
That's very interesting that you bring that up.
Well,
Not really, not so much like an actual production, but I really want to. I feel like that's kind of maybe the next sort of evolutionary step, perhaps, if I may be so bold, in my theatrical career. I'm very interested in directing, and I really want to direct a show, although it hasn't really happened yet.
But anyone who's looking for directors,
If you're looking for a director
He's
in
interested.
Ashland, North Carolina,
Kirby, how
I'm
about you?
interested and I believe very qualified.
I kind of only dabbled in directing in college and maybe a little bit actor, and it was never really any full-length shows. I was kind of more interested in short, like 10-minute plays. I really like short stories. I really like, so I would really enjoy just doing these short little pieces that I had a really specific vision for. I would be, well, I say I'd be interested in directing, but really it sounds like, just saying it sounds like so much work. So I probably won't.
Except you say that, Kirby, and I'll share this with both of you, but oftentimes I ask that question of directors, including Jeff and other people as well. And oftentimes they'll tell me, directors who act, and most of them have done that, they say they prefer directing. But the reality is they don't tell the truth, because they don't have to memorize dialogue that way, you know. So directing, that's the one advantage a lot of actors move into directing, but it is a lot of work, I imagine, you know.
It's just a lot, not like, I guess it's more of, I would rather have someone maybe guide me or tell me what they would like. I'd like to give them their vision, you know, as opposed to having to make all the decisions myself. I'm not quite there yet, but things I feel passionately about, like I could see doing it for the right project, but it is very time consuming and you do have to make a lot of you know, choices.
Excepting not that acting isn't time consuming, you know. It's like incredibly time consuming, you know, what you guys put into it. Talk a little bit about that, Kirby, just in terms of the process. So you've been in rehearsal for this show for how long?
About a week. We've really
Okay.
only been in rehearsals for about a week, and I think there's only a couple more weeks, few
Yeah,
more
it's
weeks.
a little bit of a shortened run. We're rehearsing for I think 3 weeks total, and then tech.
Oh yeah, and then tech.
So yeah, 3 weeks of rehearsal and then a week of tech, and then we open. But that's right now. It's, you know, we're pretty busy. It's 5 nights a week. We're rehearsing like Sunday through Thursday night, and we're working Monday through Friday. So it's a pretty busy lifestyle. So we're jam packing everything in this month.
Yeah, there's a well, for Tick Tick Boom or things like that, I did a lot of homework, like pre-rehearsal work. I tried to sort of come into that process, and same with the Revolutionists, almost off book or pretty familiar with the material, just based on how the process was going to go or how much time we had. For this show, it's actually been a little easier since we do have access to the playwright. If we read something and it doesn't really work, or maybe there's something that we want to change or ask if we can change, we do have that option. And so,
or to ask for clarification. Hey,
Yeah.
what does this mean? Instead of just having to guess, we can like call or email the person who wrote the play, who just lives right over there, instead of just trying to, you know.
Well,
but this week we kind of staged it, but we also this week kind of got a newer script. So I think this weekend and the following week will be a lot of like learn the lines now that we have what we're going to say locked in, you know.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a lot of monologue work and things like that.
And I also should clarify, you know, this was our first week of rehearsal, but we did table work prior to that. We have had several reads
Yeah.
with the director and the playwright in the room and kind of talked about things, so that when we went into rehearsal, we weren't off book yet, but we already knew a lot about the characters and the dynamics, and kind of we all had a general sense of the direction we wanted things to go. So we were able to kind of jump in right away that very first day and start putting it on speed.
In that process, does the script change at all, or has David made changes and modified?
In this process, it has. That's not always the case, but yeah, there have been, and some of them are very minor and very minuscule. There are tiny tweaks in the script, and some of them are really major. And I think it comes back to, you know, we mentioned that this play was written a while ago. So when David pulled it back out, he adjusted it a little bit and made a couple of changes, but that also raised a few questions that maybe he hadn't noticed that came up in rehearsal. Where like, oh, hey, what about this? This doesn't quite make sense. And then he said, oh, you're right. And he went back and looked at the show and kind of had to reframe it and not rewrite the whole script. There's like one monologue got majorly rewritten. There's a few changes here and there, but we had to go through and make.
Yeah, like the first big changes were cuts. Like the first adjustment he made was like, oh, we probably don't need, you know, once you hear something out loud, it's like, oh, we probably don't need this.
Yeah.
We just said this, or, you know, this is already obvious, or, you know, things like that. And so that was the first big thing, was just he made a bunch of cuts.
And nobody wants to go see a 2.5 hour drama. That's just,
it's too long. So
Well, you say that, Scott. A couple of years ago, it drove me crazy. 3 theaters in the area did 3-hour plus shows, you know, and as I get older, I like shorter, you know, and
yeah.
quicker.
You can, I mean, there are shows that can captivate you for 3 hours, absolutely. But most 3-hour shows should be 2 hours, right? I mean, when there's room to cut, you should cut. So,
well, even the nice thing, all shows went from, it used to be 3 acts to 2 acts, you know, which was kind of nice, cut some time out of it. Do either of the two of you ever want to write a play?
oh man.
I like writing, but it's still short form for me. I like writing, you know, songs and scenes. I don't want to spoil too much about this upcoming sketch comedy piece, but rather than a series of disparate sketches, there is kind of an overarching story, and I kind of wrote that. So in a way, yes, I collaboratively with other members of the crew am kind of writing a play, sort of.
I don't know. I have, you know, I've considered it, and I have no idea what exactly I would write a play about. You know, when I like sit down and be like, what would I write a play about? It could be anything, you know. I guess they say write about what you know, but I feel like other people have more of a formed voice, you know. I just feel like it's probably not in my wheelhouse. I used to like writing, yeah, stories or things like that, but in terms of a play, I feel like I wouldn't know where to start.
I'm going to pitch it to you right now. I'm going to pitch you a play, all right? Listen, I haven't written this play yet, but it's a play. When I think of a play, I want to write something that like is interesting and that people want to see. I don't want to write a play where there's like people sitting on a couch talking. You know what I mean? Like that's just, it's too much. So this play that I haven't written starts out with like 2 or 3 people on a bare stage, and they set up a tent. And the beginning of the show is them pitching a tent on stage, talking about this camp out, and then one of them goes to get firewood or something, and these people who are friends are setting up this camp out, and then over the course of the night, who knows what happens? Drama can unfold, wild animals can attack, they can discover things about themselves or each other. But do you agree with that premise? Is that a great premise?
Is the premise just they're camping?
Yeah, that's the idea. That's how it starts. That's the first idea. And then you sit down and you're like, okay, so then what would the, you know, who are the characters? What would they say? And like, what's the drama? What's the conflict? And what do they need to learn? Or
well, sometimes you start with setting, you know.
Well, I'll volunteer to be the bear, you know, so
nice.
Yes, I'm directing and writing, and I've dabbled more in stage management outside of acting. That's my.
Had you ever heard that story from Scott?
No.
Oh, okay.
The 10 thing?
10 thing.
No, but I mean, I'm happy.
Good idea. I mean, it's
sounds
not
great.
written it down, but
Why not?
Well, it's like I'll share one quick story. So a local church does Return to Bethlehem. Have you ever seen that? And they do all the
I think so.
the trips at a church. Each area has a stop, and so I was really crushed. I was in it the last couple of years, and I wanted to be baby Jesus, but they wouldn't let me be baby Jesus, you know. And you laugh, Kirby. So instead, I became the donkey. I was a perfect jackass. You know? No, I was a soldier, I think. But anyway,
ageism right there, right?
I've been Jesus before. I've played Jesus.
Have you?
And an Easter show though.
Yeah, but baby Jesus or no?
No, this was Jesus rising from the cave, like the rolling of the stone and stuff.
I have never played Jesus. For some reason, people always want Jesus to have long, lustrous hair. I don't know. It's just a thing.
I mean, I don't.
Exactly. Well, I think I like your hair, Scott. No matter what they
Oh,
say.
thank you so much.
Both your hair.
Or no, you laugh, Kirby. My response is, I'm not losing hair. I'm gaining face. You know, and then
Yes.
Then Cynthia always annoys me. We'll be somewhere, and she'll put a head up. I'll say I have a 5 head, you know, and she says, no, you have a 6 head, you know. So that's my take on hair. So and exactly. I love it.
Well, my dad would always say, if some men want to waste their testosterone on hair, that's fine.
Good line. Moving forward, anything upcoming for the both of you can share? We talked about the skit comedy. Anything either of you else going to be in?
Yeah, well, yeah, I can say so. How to is in January for you, and then
For you.
yeah, in March I will be. I mean, this is way ahead. What is it? September? Yeah, in March I'll be. I think trying to do Asheville Fringe Festival.
Okay.
I'll be bringing a piece that I did for 369, which was a Different Strokes short play and monologue festival. I did kind of a one-woman piece that I will be hopefully performing at next year's Fringe.
That's incredible, an incredible show. It's really good.
And then in April we might be, well, I don't know how much I can actually say.
Okay,
Nothing's super official, but March is fine. That's 6 months from now.
And beyond March, I'll ask the both of you kind of a final question here. Is there anything you've always wanted to do? In other words, down the road, aside from the campground, the camp thing, any play you've ever wanted to do or see yourself doing in the future? Any one thing?
Not any one thing, lots. I mean, there's lots of things that I want to do. I want to do a lot of things. I want to direct shows. I want to be in a musical. I want to be a villain in a musical.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, mostly for me, it's just like dream roles or like musicals that I would love to have done here. That
Name 3 of them.
Passing Strange, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Oh God, I'm on the spot.
No, but Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, nobody's done that here, I don't think, have they?
No, and I would love it if somebody did it. I mean, I don't know, I couldn't guarantee myself a part, but I would just, that show is just so fun. And the score is so jazzy, you know.
I know,
just really like the music.
great show. You never see that done though, so something to look forward to. To conclude, again, back to the current show, Scott, if you would give me the dates and the
Yes,
information.
absolutely. Please come see Ben and Angela, written by David Brendan Hopes, put on by the Sublime Theater at the BB Theater starting October 5th. Show runs October 5th through 21st, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday nights for 3 weekends. Shows at 7:30 p.m. at the BB Theater in downtown Asheville, 20 Commerce Street.
And I'll mention
for further information, please click here or click here or read the scrolling text along the bottom of your screen.
Well, I'll mention something else though, Scott, everybody kids about it, but this is a show you really should get tickets in advance because BB Theater only has what, 50 seats or something, 48?
Yeah, it's about a 54 seat maybe auditorium, so we definitely love those advanced ticket sales.
Okay, and if Kirby and Scott are going to be in it, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yes.
I enjoyed this. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much
Blaine.
for having us.
Okay.
This is great.
Thanks. See you soon.
Take care.